let's go to this. We, mentioned early up front here that that gun control has moved to the forefront again of the national conversation. The reason why it is unlikely to pass, or at one of them, but probably one of the biggest ones, at least, before you can even have a conversation, is because of the filibuster. And yesterday, Mitch McConnell reiterated his threat to Democrats if they, and we should make it clear, the filibuster is gone for judicial nominees, both Supreme Court and federal judicial. Those were two different steps. The filibuster is gone for nominees of cabinet secretary, of Senate, of positions in the administration requiring Senate confirmation. That's gone. All those things have been rolled back by Democrats and Republicans over the past 10 or so years, essentially because Republicans were so relentless in obstruction. And now Mitch McConnell, you'll remember Mitch McConnell is the one who prevented a Supreme Court nominee from getting a hearing because it was only a year out from an election, is claiming that if the Democrats get rid of the filibuster for legislation, he's going to go scorched earth. And I think in part, I think there's a strategy of why he came out and said this blatantly false assertion about the filibuster yesterday. This is Mitch McConnell on Capitol Hill.
Senate floor, you argue the filibuster is not rooted in racism. Historians differ on this. Are you concerned about the perception? If it is used against advancing voting rights, certainly the public perception is that Republicans are going to use this tool to make it harder for black people to vote.
Yeah, actually, historians do not agree. It has no racial history at all. None. So there's no dispute among historians about that. I make no apologies for opposing this bill. You've heard Senator Blunt outline the various flaws involved in it. This is all about a power grab. If it were related to civil rights, why were the Democrats using the tool last year and the year before that and the last 6 years? Why is it all of a sudden a civil rights issue when it wasn't for them as recently as last year? Honestly, with all due respect, that is nonsense. This is a power grab. It's all about trying to take over the American election system. It has all kinds of flaws, and under Senator Blunt's leadership, we're going to begin to point them out in great detail starting tomorrow in the Rules Committee.
Now, they're talking about H.R. 1, or now introduced in the Senate as S1. This is a voting rights bill. It also has anti-corruption measures, too, in terms of our elections and in terms of transparency for donations. But it is just simply a fact that the filibuster, particularly, it has changed over the past 20 years because McConnell started to deploy it in every circumstance possible, imaginable. But for the first, 50, 60 years in the existence of the filibuster, it was deployed primarily to stop the expansion of, or I should say, the expansion of rights for black people and voting rights for people in this country, but really just sort of like the creation of parity of rights to some degree.
Yeah, and it was deployed so sparsely and only really specifically for the purpose of blocking civil rights legislation that Northern Democrats at the time, or Northern liberals, kind of just allowed the Southern racists to use it because they wanted to kind of throw them a bone for other legislative priorities like the New Deal back in the day to get through. There's a quote Adam Gentleson took from Senator Richard Russell in 1949 where he basically admitted that this was really about blocking civil rights legislation. So there's no real differing historical data on this. The proof is in the pudding. This was how things worked back when the filibuster was being utilized decades before. He's trying to muddy the waters, McConnell, now, and frankly, I actually think it's one of the best strategies he's deployed since he's now become the minority leader, because now the conversation is about racism, and regular people who aren't paying attention to the historical context might go, wait, yeah, they were using it back during when the Republicans were in power. How are they turning around and calling the Republicans racist when obviously, you know, there have been many Democrats, even when the Republicans were in power, who were saying once we are in the majority, we need to do filibuster reform.
I agree. I agree, and even would add to that it is one, it sort of muddies the water about the racist quality, but it also, look, during the years of Trump and Obama, all of our politics got highly racialized on both sides, and by making this about the notion that Democrats are ostensibly calling them racist because of the, around the filibuster, as opposed to the fact that, like, we know their voter suppression techniques focus primarily on communities of color, particularly black people, because they know the ratio, the relationship between being black and being Democratic is, 9 to 10, essentially. Maybe a little bit more. They can, they will target minority districts, black districts, and they know if they can suppress the votes there, they are going to help themselves. So yes, I agree. It's a way of racializing this issue, which it is racial, but it's a way for them to use a clarion call and get their folks in support of not getting rid of the filibuster. Frankly, I don't think it's going to work. People don't care about the filibuster, period, end of story. They care about legislation that's passed, and none of them want to own a lot of these things that they vote for or against, particularly against.